Welcome to the Roost Podcast, brought to you by Buckeye Bowhunter. And now, your host, Josh Grund.
What is going on, guys? Welcome back to episode 6 of the Roost Podcast. This is a pretty good one. We're really excited to bring this one to you. John, Bryce, and I get into deer season, talking about deer hunting, summer, what our plans, our goals are this summer, what we learned from last year, and how maybe we're having a little bit of a mentality change or a way we're going about things. John also goes on like a really awesome rant about his food plot and what he's learned over the past 4 or so years having a food plot and managing it, which I found really interesting, and we may do a whole podcast on that in the future. But for now, we're just dipping our toes back into deer season, getting our brains functioning and thinking about it, I guess. And hopefully you guys find it interesting or informative. So without further ado, please enjoy. What is going on, guys? It is Josh here with Buckeye Bowhunter, and this time we hit the record button. We literally were recording for about 15 minutes and did not hit record, and it was fantastic. Super bummed that you guys are going to miss that because it was probably the best recording we've ever had. Don't you think, guys?
Probably.
Yeah. But anyways, we're here. We got another episode of the Roost Podcast. It's been a little bit. We've kind of been on a little hiatus, a little break, kind of resetting the minds, which we'll talk about that a little bit. But I got Bryce and John here with me, like always. How you guys doing?
Oh, really good. Enjoying the summertime, enjoying being with the family, kind of also enjoying shutting down the brain on deer season or hunting season, refocusing on deer season. But yeah, kind of kicking back, relaxing, enjoying the weather, getting the garden started, doing the all-American lifestyle.
Yeah, it's that time of year, man. Deer. I heard you're smoking
with John on
groundhogs
that one.
lately.
I'm absolutely dusting groundhogs from my house. I'm over double digits now, so they just keep coming back.
What are you
So
shooting
that's
them with?
actually kind of 22 Hornet, an old HR bolt action 22 Hornet, all original scope and all. It's like a 2x zoom. It doesn't really zoom much, but I got to shoot a little high sometimes out in the field out back. But yeah, it's fun. It keeps me get home from work. I'm always hunting. Like I'm looking out the truck window before I even park it. It's a blast. It's something to do in the evening, besides your house chores. I've drove around a couple times at some farm properties. The guy the farm I rent from, looking for more, but haven't had any luck doing that way. They're just all around the house, fields out back. But no, I'm with John. It was nice to have about 2 months to wind down after turkey season. Do some other stuff I like to do. Been fishing my butt off since. Got out on Lake Erie a couple times. Got some walleye going, and
I was lucky enough to get out on Lake Erie myself. One of my buddies has a boat, and he gave me a call after work. He's like, "What are you doing?" I'm like, "Oh, nothing much, He's like, "Hey, come on out. Gonna get in the boat. Let's go get some walleye." I go, "Oh, I'm there, buddy."
right.
And we did pretty good. We didn't limit out, but we still did pretty good. It was fun. It's nice to throw some fish in the freezer.
Right, I agree. Mine's the same situation. My buddy's got a boat he's had forever, and with the tank, it gets out there and eats up all the waves because Lake Erie gets rough. But
Did you guys know that actually Lake Erie is the most dangerous body of water on the planet?
I guarantee it.
That's what I heard.
Guarantee it.
That's what I heard. It's because the waves and the weather come on so quick. There's more shipwrecks around like Presque Isle Bay.
Yep.
Like outside of Presque Isle Bay, there's more shipwrecks per like square mile than like anywhere in the United States or something like that.
I believe it, man. I went out on a rough day last year, and I've been deep sea fishing probably 8 times in my life. Never got seasick. Way out. I mean, 4 hours out. And I went out there. We were probably fighting over 3-footers, probably 4 or 5-footers, and I got sicker than a dog.
On Lake Erie.
I've never been seasick in my life. Yeah, on Lake Erie.
So
And that same year, first trip out at the islands, we seen this boat about sink. He was taking in water on the back. It was rough as shit in between the islands up there, Kelly's Island, or whatever the 2 big islands are. West side, I don't remember what they are. And he had to pin it to keep his bow up so he wasn't getting any more water in. And he was coming straight at us. Like, we thought he was going to hit us. So we're waving. He just turns right away, right towards land, and kept it pinned all the way to the land. And this is like,
Wow.
This was, I think, March, April, probably April.
Oh, God.
So water's freezing. Like, if they sink,
Cold.
they're dead. Yeah, it's a dangerous lake for sure.
It's good to put some
Fun
fish in
one,
the
though, when
freezer,
it's
that's
calm.
for sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
I've been on, sometimes I need like a month off, after deer hunting for 4 months, then right into turkey season. Like, turkey season's so close to the end of deer season. You really don't get a break, because as soon as deer season's over, you're like, oh, new turkey calls, this, that, blah, 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 practicing calling, and you get right into it. And then, between that and the podcast and making videos and the YouTube channel and stuff, sometimes you just, I just need a break. And the last month has kind of been that for me. I've been pretty busy with work, but I got to go down to the Keys for a little bit and do some deep sea fishing and do some snorkeling down there. I got fried
Nice.
like you wouldn't believe. Our fishing charter, we took a fishing charter actually for mahi. And this is kind of a funny story. We get out there and, my girlfriend's brother, her dad, and her uncle, and me. So it was the 4 of us, and then the captain and his first mate or whatever. And we get out there. We caught like 30 yellowtail in, I don't know, an hour. Just smoked them. So we had our dinner, had all our fish like immediately.
Nice.
It was like, it was interesting because that was the first charter I've ever done. And it just felt weird because like I'm sitting there and some dude is just putting bait on my hook and I'm just dropping it in and just reeling fish up. Like, it just felt so different than anything I'm used to, but it was fun, reeling in these ocean fish. But then we all turned to head out further into the ocean. We needed to get like 20 some miles out or something to go after these mahi. And, man, we hit this storm and it was nuts, man. We're on a big boat, 35-foot boat. This storm came in so fast, and the captain came around to the front. He's like, if you guys want to keep going, we'll go. This is nothing I have never done before. We'll punch right through this storm. Don't worry about it. And I just remember my girlfriend's dad looking at me just like, is that normal? And I'm like, I don't know, dude. Like, we're gonna punch through this storm. We see lightning strikes and stuff. He just guns it, dude. I mean, we were going fast, hitting these waves. It was so uncomfortable. My hip hurt from just smacking into the side of the boat the whole time. And it just downpouring, lightning, thunder. But we came right out the other side and we fished for about an hour, and then another one came through and everybody was like, yeah, we'll just take a half day. We'll just go home. So we turned around and came home. We didn't end up catching any mahi, but it was a pretty interesting trip for sure.
Wow.
Yeah. But in the last day of my trip, I was so sunburnt, dude. I couldn't even do anything from snorkeling and stuff. Just I put sunscreen on, but I don't know, washes off in the salt water, and I think I was snorkeling for like 6 hours. So just fried, all peeled, everything. I'm all good now though. But excited to get home. I remember laying on the couch in the Keys, sunburnt, just like, I cannot wait to be in a tree stand and it's like 40 degrees out. Like,
Yes.
my mind's already
Great.
switching to deer, man. So
Oh, yeah.
I guess let's get into it a little bit. Like, if you guys want to, take turns talking about, I guess what's your plans for this summer, your mindset going into it. Yeah, I guess if you guys have anything to say about that, John, you want to start?
Yeah, I know every year I do this to myself. I'll start putting together a list of things I want to do, what I want to get done, what I'm going to change from last year, lessons learned, try some new stuff. And every year that list just grows and grows and grows and grows. And I try and match it up with how many weekends do I have to prepare and how much time do I have? And they never seem to equalize. So that list is always incomplete year after
Yep.
year. But yeah, I went last weekend and tried to put a dent in it. It was fun. Surprisingly enough, I've got a food plot out there, and I was pleasantly surprised to see a good turnout. So seeds that I had planted last year didn't germinated this spring, and I got a really good turnout. I didn't have I didn't have to do anything this spring. I typically do a spring plant and a fall plant, and I looked at it, and I've got multiple species of clover. I've got hairy vetch. I've got cereal grain 4 foot tall with 4 or 5 inch seed heads on them. Everything looks fantastic. So I actually did buy seed with the intent to plant, but I ended up just overseeding the food plot, and I'm going to see what happens.
That's awesome, man. Couple
kind of
questions. Just for the listeners. Like, I'm not a food plot guy. I've never done food plots. I just hunt private land. And I've asked farmers, no one ever lets me. I don't think they want to give up their, their actual farm fields. But all I really know is from listening to you, John. First, for the listeners, explain like this is just a DIY food plot. How big is it? Like, where is it kind of located, and like, how do you guys hunt it, or how do you utilize it? And then I guess, is that normal? Like you said, you do a spring and a fall. Is it normal where all that stuff comes back? Did you plant like a perennial or an annual, or were you surprised by that?
So this the food plot itself is about an acre and a half, and it's in the shape of an L, a large L. So there's a little point on the inside of that L. And the tree line has actually old crab apples. So that's kind of a nice early fall food source. They'll hammer that, but it's centralized in our property. So everybody pretty much gets a shot at hunting it. Typically what I've done, so I don't have a tractor, so I've got minimal equipment. I do have a side-by-side, and I've grown my equipment, over the years. I ended up buying like I'd say a 5 foot cultipacker off a farmer. It's rusted and old, but it works great. I ended up buying a sprayer, a pull behind sprayer, which I can just hook power to the side by side, just utilize that battery. So those are the two main pieces of equipment. I've got a chest pack seeder with just a hand crank that I use to spread seed. And really my food plot currently we're on year 4. So it's been a progression for sure. Year 1 was challenging. The plot itself used to be just a fallow field that would get brush hogged. Not really utilized for much. A little bit of skeet shooting, but really wasn't utilized for much. So that's kind of why I kind of took it over and made it a food plot. So typically, I've been using kind of the no-till method, kind of the regenerative agriculture type style. The goal is to be, chemical free at some point. But to start, year one, I had to use chemicals to terminate it. I wasn't going to plow. I wasn't going to disc. I do not have a seed planter. So I looked into possibly renting one, and that still might be in the cards for me. But I don't know if there's, a quality deer management association close to me that has one that I could rent, or if a forestry department. I still have to look into it. But yeah, it's progressed from when I started, where I was glyphosate heavy. I had to terminate that grass, that turf, and it took a while. Another piece of equipment that I utilized was a drag harrow. I don't know if you guys have ever heard of one or seen one, but it's, in essence, you could think about at a baseball field where they drag a piece of interwoven metal behind them to kind of clear and settle out the dirt for the baseball diamond. But in my case, it's a heavier gauge steel, and the ends act as tines, and they kind of dig into the dirt and kind of tear it up, kind of scratch the surface.
Gotcha.
So I typically plant in the spring, and my process is to broadcast my seed, utilize my cultipacker, and roll down whatever existing vegetation is there. The last couple of years, my third year, second half of my second year and third year turned out really well. Last year I ended up with purple top turnips, bigger than your fist, and there were maybe thousands of them out there.
Jeez.
It was sketchy. It was sketchy to walk across. I can tell you that, because you'd be scared to roll your ankle.
Really?
John, can I ask you a
So,
question quick?
yeah,
I'm
definitely
with
cut me
Josh
off.
on this. I've never done food plots in my life, let alone seen them, to be honest. Are you planting different species in your spring plant than your fall plant? And if so,
Yes.
yes. So those fall plants that are now germinating and growing, is that going to hurt your food plot in any way? Like, are the deer going to be like, why the hell do I have cereal grains in June? And are like, I mean, obviously you wouldn't think it'd scare them away by any means, but I don't know. Can you elaborate on it? Get me in the loop here.
Yeah, absolutely. So I've been buying seed from a guy from Pennsylvania, and he used to work for Tecumate. He's got his own company website, but I've been kind of following him, and kind of, he uses a drill, a seed drill. I don't, but he developed his own seed blends. So typically in your spring, you're always trying to understand what kind of plants you're planting and how they work off of each other.
Okay, right.
And I really aligned in the way his thought process is with what I wanted to do. I wanted to get away from chemicals. I have to use them now because I'm not there yet. He also uses bare seed. He doesn't use a coating. That coating is actually, when you start looking into it, I believe they're called nicotinoids.
Yeah,
They're bad business, man. They're
I believe it.
a synthetic fertilizer.
Mhm.
They're not good for your soil health. So I've kind of adopted his methodology, obviously without the seed drill, but yeah, in the spring I'll plant a blend to always work off of itself. So when you think about, you hear people doing a soil test, testing your pH, testing what minerals are in the ground, what's your, if you have to lime the field. I honestly don't subscribe to any of that, and I don't believe it's necessary. I think you're just setting money on fire when you're doing that, because you can get away from it. You can utilize plants to do that job for you. So if you plant, soybeans only, they're either nitrogen fixating or they're going to eat up your nitrogen. So
Right.
that's kind of why you see, big ag rotating crops and using a lot of synthetics, because they're doing a monoculture. Those certain plants that they plant, that's all they plant. They're starving the dirt of certain minerals and not putting anything back.
Yeah, I know
So that's why you see
corn.
corn, soybean.
Yeah, those are the two big ones. Corn sucks the nitrogen out, right? And soybeans put it back
Yep.
in.
Fixated.
Yeah.
Gotcha. So your blend, John, and that guy you were talking about, you're kind of following off of those plants you're planting. They're kind of also going off a mutualistic relationship between each other, not just the plants in the soil, but plant to plant.
Absolutely.
Gotcha.
So half that blend is going to be nitrogen fixating, and half of it is going to be taking up nitrogen.
Nice. That's awesome.
In addition to, they're going to be taking up different minerals. So there's always going to be a variety. And I think that's what's interesting. And I've kind of come to learn this and see it firsthand, is every year the food plot changes. It's going to be different. Even if I plant the same blend, it's going to be different, because whatever the nutrients are in that soil, and as that soil health increases, certain plants are going to thrive and certain plants are going to get starved out. So it's pretty interesting. My first year, it was a lot of weeds, but it was also a lot of really cool native stuff. So I thought that was really interesting. My seeds didn't take off, so be it. I had to get started somewhere. I had to use a lot of glyphosate. I had to terminate that field 3 times before I could even get down to getting it workable. Like I said, year 3, I really took off. In the spring, I plant a certain blend. So I'll see sunflowers, I'll see cereal grains, I'll see clovers. So clovers are perennial. They'll keep going year after year after year. So that's great. Brassicas don't make it year after year. One, the deer love it and they crush it, and they don't allow it to survive.
Right.
But yeah, the spring is a spring type blend. So I like to put stuff that turkeys are gonna like. Just trying to attract everything. But really, that fall, I'm going to terminate and start over. But I'm going to add things that the deer are really, really going to need to come in and get: brassicas, the turnips, and that, having the turnips, they're going to eat the leaves early on during the hunting season. But then as soon as that snow falls, they're going to have turnips, they're going to have greens, they're going to have stuff to eat with 6-8 inches of snow. It's not going to matter. They're still coming. So it's been a long time coming, and it's been a huge learning experience, but it's paying off. The deer are all over it. Every time I go there, they're there. So if I could play the wind right, I typically have a decent shot. But yeah, so that was interesting. That was good. I overseeded my food plot, and I ended up recovering all my cameras on the property and kind of revisiting areas that I had pinpointed last year that I wanted to revisit. Kind of learning lessons from last year, found some new trails, kind of understood a little bit better how the deer are using the property. And I hung, refreshed my cellular cameras in the way deep far back that are difficult to get to, refresh them, just let them run. So I don't have to go back in there. and I kind of came up with some other ideas. One being, I had some really nice encounters last year with some shooter bucks, but it was during the rut. They were on full go, chasing mode, and I had 3 opportunities that just didn't come to fruition. I couldn't stop one. He was on a full on trot. Couldn't stop him, and he was really on the borderline of being comfortable of shooting him, even if he did stop. So he was at like 38 yards with stuff in between him. So that's
tough.
on the list. That's on the list to change. So I noticed that route he took. I'm gonna get back there with a chainsaw and drop some trees and kind of divert that trail that he took to bring him a little bit closer to me.
That's a great
And
idea.
really, to kind of paint the picture, there's the wetland edge where there's briars and high stem count, and it's just too hard to travel through quickly. So that's why the bucks won't, it's a great spot to hide into bed. But
Right.
during the rut, they're not going to be clanking their horn, their antlers. They just can't travel fast through it. So they get on the edge of it and run the edge. And, they're catching wind. If any does are in there, they'll know they're in there. But that's just a touch too far for me. So I'm actually going to drop a couple of trees and, almost make it like just a little barrier where they have to come a little bit closer off the edge, go around that tree to keep going. And that'll bring them into a comfortable, 20, 25 yards to where my stand setup is.
That's awesome.
Again, that's on the bucket list.
Right. The one in a
Cutting trees
million.
in the summertime.
Yeah, you gotta.
In the woods, not only.
I see what you mean. You got a heck of a list, John. First off, let me say I think we need to do an entire podcast about your food plot
Mhm.
because
I agree.
I feel like we could have kept talking about that for the whole freaking podcast.
I agree.
Yeah, absolutely.
We
You
could.
definitely
I
do
mean,
that.
I don't care.
Maybe we'll do that. We'll
Switch
do
it
that
up.
next time. Maybe that'll be our next podcast. Maybe next week or something like that. Because I was pretty interested in that. I'd like to know. Well, I'll keep the questions until then. But anyways, very interesting. But yeah, I mean,
Yeah. So what are you guys getting into? Getting set up.
I don't care. You want to
Go
go,
ahead,
Bryce?
Josh.
Mindset. Are you?
No, we'll go. Josh, you first, man. I'll go last.
Yeah, to be honest, man, I haven't even been in the woods since turkey season. all my cameras are still out for turkeys. They've all died. I actually
Shoot.
all my cell cams, I quit paying for them for now. And I probably won't get out until maybe this weekend. I'll go out and I'll move my cameras around and get some mineral sites out. Usually what I do this time of year is I get minerals out in several locations. I got, 5 or 6 farms that I hunt. I'll try to get at least one spot per farm and get a camera over it. I usually get, in the summer, the big deer that I get on camera are usually hitting those minerals. It's, pretty good attractant. Does need it to produce milk for their, fawns right now, and bucks crave it because they're growing antlers. They need a lot of salt and phosphorus and all that other good stuff to grow those antlers. But like I said,
I'm right with you, Josh.
yeah, like
Me
I'm
too.
right. I'm huge on the mineral sites. It's super important. I've even added a calcium carbonate to mine just to give them an extra boost.
Yep. Here's the thing though, John. I listened to someone talking on a podcast recently how they're talking about how Ohio is going to start moving towards the point where we're not allowed to bait anymore. So with CWD being such a thing and it's in Ohio now, like, are you still, like, I know minerals are really good for deer, but like you're just creating a way for deer to transmit that from one to another. You know what I mean? By making those mineral sites. So is that something, if you got 2 or 3 mineral sites on your 500-acre farm and CWD happens to come in, there's a lot better chance, in my opinion, for that to spread faster across your whole farm and wipe out more deer. It's like going to a
Sure.
restaurant and eating off of everybody's plate, essentially. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Something to think about. I'm probably still going to do it this year because I don't think there's a lot of CWD or any that has been found in the areas that I hunt currently. I don't know. I don't know what you do. I know if you
For me, I'm going to probably keep doing it. But if it does migrate over into my area, I'll rethink it. But
could you imagine if the state of Ohio said you're not allowed to bait anymore? The freaking pushback.
everybody's going to go bananas.
I kind of would be
Everybody
okay with
relies
it.
on it so hard.
Because to be brutally honest, I've never baited deer. So I would kind of like to see how it would play out. Because there's a lot of other states that don't allow it.
I'd be totally okay with it.
I'd be totally okay with it too. I've baited deer in the past, but I think Ohio has a ton of big deer get killed every year. And I'm just saying this out of, anecdotal evidence. Like, I don't have any real numbers to back it up or anything like that. But in my opinion, at least more than 65, 70% of those giant deer that are killed in Ohio every year are killed on a corn pile. So I would like to see what happens to those numbers when, if baiting's,
they're going to plummet.
I would think so. That would be my
they're going to plummet.
That would be my first guess, but I don't know. Yeah, I mean, I don't have anything against people who bait. I got a buddy who's killed, multiple giant deer, and all of them are on bait piles. It's a different thing to me, not to get political or whatever, that get too deep in the weeds with this, but like hunting deer over bait is a different thing. Cause like I said, nothing against it, but the way my buddy hunts is, cell cameras over corn, and he may not even get in a tree stand until, October 25th, when he gets a daylight photo of that buck on his corn, and then he goes in, hunts 2 times, maybe. Like, I think the last 3 seasons in a row, he's probably hunted less than a handful of times and killed his buck. If you enjoy that, you enjoy that. Nope, I don't have anything against that, but I like kicking the crap out of myself for 2.5 months before I finally connect with some 3.5-year-old cruising down some downwind side of a bedding area or something like that. That's the way I like to do it. But
it's like a more natural feel to hunting, That's why I like it.
To me, yeah. But anyways, so that's what I'm usually doing this time of year. So hopefully I can get out and get those mineral sites out here and get my cameras up, at least a few of them, in the next week or 2.
I've got something.
Sure.
Do you guys have permanent stands? And I guess I'll just tell you what I do and see if you guys do the same thing. But I've got a handful of permanent stands that when the season ends, I go and I hit up each and every one of them, and I unratchet the ratchet straps and loosen all the straps, just so the tree doesn't grow into them. It just helps the tree and really lets the tree grow. And then when the season gets closer, I'll get in there, it starts getting colder out, I'll get back in there, tighten them up, or go in a little bit earlier on my first sit in that stand, and knowing that they're loose, get in there and tighten them up. Is that something that you guys look into, or how often do you I call it tree stand maintenance. I go in, I check the stands if they're good. I don't know, maybe there's deadfall, maybe there's a tree that split from lightning strike. I'm going to have to move the stand. Is that something that you guys look into in this time of the year, middle of the summer?
Yeah, I mean,
I personally do not.
Go ahead, Bryce.
All you, Josh.
I was just going to say, I personally, in the last few years, and this is something I was going to touch on, John, something I want to do a little different this year. I haven't really hunted out of permanent stands for the last 3 or 4 years, except for a handful of times. I think I have, like, I could probably count real quick. 1, 2, maybe 3 permanent sets on farms that I know of, and that's it. And I will do that. I'll go out. I'll, I think last year I replaced all the cables on them. I replaced some of the bolts on a lot of them. Put new ratchet straps on them. Put new ratchet straps on the steps going up. But I think, talking about, kind of goals for next year or whatever, after my rutcation, what I really noticed, or what I feel like I need to change, is I think I was too mobile last year. To the point where I'm an overthinker, and I think everything through too much, and I have a hard time making tough decisions. So when you have a stand on your back, 99% of the time, all that is making tough decisions, where to sit every single time you go hunting, as opposed to if you have a permanent stand, and you go in, you don't really have a choice. That's where you're going. And I think that indecisiveness that I have, a lot of times hurt me more than helped me. And then I think there was a lot of mornings last year, where it's dead quiet, and I'm trying to get into some bedding area with a stand on my back and hang a stand an hour before daylight. It's too much. And, I've kind of gotten away from the permanent stands over the last few years, because I used to have a ton of them, and there's probably a bunch out in trees snapped off and fallen out that I've, left out there. I got a few of them in the shed out here, but I've just gotten away from that. And I'd like to go back, kind of splitting up my stand time between being mobile and being in a permanent set. So that is a goal of mine this summer, is to get at least, 3 or 4 more permanent sets up, and then, make sure the ones that I have up are rocking and ready to go, limbs trimmed and safe and everything. But that's definitely a big goal of mine.
So could I ask, what is your, I guess, so you're changing up maybe your mentality this season?
I would say so.
I know I've got a buddy at work who hunts the mountainous areas of PA, and me and him talk quite a bit. And he's another mobile guy and has indecisive issues, and he wants to go in, he saddle hunts, and he just, you sounded like you guys are talking about the same exact thing. And his mindset, which I totally agree with, and maybe you might want to adopt, is early season, he's going to be ultra mobile, find the sign, go find the bucks, chase them down, actively hunt them. However, when it starts hitting Halloween, after Halloween, that first week of November, he's going to historical data, historical cameras, and he's going to have stands set up, permanent stands. And really, during that rut period, if he's got historical data on a trail, a funnel, a swamp pinch point, he's just going to put his butt in the stand and he's just going to wait it out.
Post up. Yep.
Post up.
That's a good idea.
It's good. It's always been good for years.
Yep.
During a certain period of time, he's not going to overthink it. He's just going to sit and put his time in. I know he doesn't. He said, that's against everything within him. He wants to run and gun and go and get them. But it's, that's a good area. Every year you've got a shooter buck running through, a shooter buck tending a doe, shooter buck dogging a doe. What are you doing? Why,
Yep. I can't tell you how many times this year if I would have just stayed where I was for 48 hours, 2 days, I would have connected on a giant, it was just too much. I need to be over here, need to be over there. Oh, I got a picture here. Let me go hunt there. And then the buck I'm after walks right where I should have been, if I just stayed where I was. So that's the big mentality, change that I want to have this year is just like you said, that historical data, and that's part of my this time of year thing too, is going through all of the trail camera photos that I had last year, right? And if you get on my computer, you'll see I got everything sorted by the property I'm hunting, the buck I'm hunting, the date, and all that stuff. I can go into November and I can look at Curly or whatever buck I'm after and see exactly the photos I got, where he was certain times of the year, certain times of that month. And that historical data, I think, is really useful for that rut time period, because you're going to get bucks coming from all over the place, kind of the same time period every single year after year, where early season, it's a little different, right? Early season, like you said, it's kind of a crapshoot. You may get a big buck that's kind of holding up in a spot, and you may not. So you do have to be a little more mobile.
Early season, I always feel like they're on the beans, and then the beans dry up. Where do they go next?
Acorns.
I feel like the next, exactly. The next food source is acorns.
Mm-hmm.
Not every tree produces every year, so that is variable every year.
Well, crops are variable too, right? Those beans may be corn this year, so those bedding areas are going to change every single year. And I mean, there is something to say where if you could keep historical data of where big bucks tend to bed during certain years when, say this acorn tree is dropping like crazy and you got beans in this field, you always get a 180-inch deer bedding in this swamp, but I mean, shoot, you need like a crazy algorithm to figure that stuff out. I'm sure there's a pattern there, but it is tough. Exactly.
Yeah, you gotta get out and find where they're bedding, and really you have to actively hunt them.
Yep.
I feel like in the early season, you have to actively go out and get them. But then once that the food moves from beans to acorns to then the rut, well, the rut, you need to be where they're looking for the does.
Yep.
And that's kind of where
just wait.
That mindset is. If you have a good spot from historical data off your cameras, the best thing for you to do is just post up and get comfortable and wait them out.
Yep. I agree.
I feel like I had that.
I
agree. Josh, I feel like I had that same issue this year on public land. I noticed it kind of early, first year mobile hunting. I started off running, gunning, climbing a different tree every time, right? And I seen some deer in the beginning, and then what I started to do is like I'd hang that stand, and I left it for a week or two. So then once ruts, like pre-rut started coming, whatever, I'd sit there once. I'd go sit in a permanent once, and I'd start hopping around to the other 3 permanents I have. Put me in front of a lot of deer. But then, like, I don't know, that prime rut time came, in November, and I don't know if it's I overhunted those couple private stands at that point or what, but I feel like I just couldn't get on that big one running does. I don't know. It was odd. It was a learning point, but I mean, I don't know if I want to move more. I'm kind of in a point where I think I need to move more because I'm also fighting pressure too. I felt like that hurt me leaving that stand up for maybe a week at a time, even though I'm only going to hunt it once or twice.
Mm-hmm.
I still felt like I needed to move it more just because of pressure.
Here's what I'll say. I think there's a super fine line there, and it really depends on where you're hunting. Your buddy John out in PA, that dude can move around wherever he wants. He's hunting public land in the mountains. He's probably got hundreds of thousands of acres. And those deer are probably few and far between too, because they're big woods deer.
They are not patternable.
He's got to bounce around every time he hunts, probably. You know what I'm saying? In Ohio here, we're hunting small parcels. We're hunting, where I hunt, small parcels, small farms. It's easy to bump deer and bust deer and ruin a spot really quick. So you have to have that balance, I think. Like, I don't want to understate or overstate how deadly walking into the woods with a stand on your back is. I've killed more deer in my life being mobile than I have killed sitting in a stand day in and day out, right? Like being mobile is my favorite tactic, and to me, it's like the most effective tactic. But you also like don't want to understate or overstate how important it is at certain times of the year, depending on the situation, depending on what you got going on your property, to just sit your butt down in a permanent stand and wait and wait and wait. And there's guys who can do that and are successful every year, and there's guys who can't do that, you know.
They have to have the right situation and have to have the right feature,
Yes.
right? If they like, so
Perfect.
I guess to kind of piggyback off what you're saying, the guys that can post up and sit through the rut, they've got a creek crossing.
Yep.
Where it's the only place you can cross the creek where it gets shallow, or you've got a pinch point, or you've got, for me, I've got a swamp edge. They can't move quickly through the swamp when they're traveling and seeking. So they hang on the edge. So I know where they're going to be. They're going to be right on the edge. They're not going to be running through the middle of the woods. There's no point. I mean, so I guess your permanent setup, you have to have the right feature to be able to do it. A saddle on a ridge top or on the ridge top. But if you don't, and you've got, a monotonous topography, you got to move to where they're at. You got to find the sign, and you got to be able, I agree, Josh, you have to be able to move. So I guess it is site specific to wherever you're hunting and wherever you're
It's
at.
tough if you got 60 acres and it's just all monotonous maple and poplar woods and there's no pinch points or nothing like that. I mean, most places have somewhere that's going to funnel deer, I would say. But right. I mean, you may just have to go find another chunk of property or something, because you're right, John. Those bucks, like those big bucks, if you want to kill a 3.5, 4.5, 5.5-year-old deer, I don't know if I would even put a 3.5-year-old deer in that category, but you need to be in a spot where those bucks feel like they're a second away from being safe, right? Like they're not going to be walking through a wide open woods. They want to be up tight, close to cover. They're trying to cover ground. They're trying to find does, but I promise you, safety is the number one thing in that buck's mind all year round. They might, relax on it a little bit, but I've been busted by bucks in the rut, and they don't let you forget it. So they're serious about being safe as well during that time. But
I think this brings up a key tactic that we pretty much fight every year, right? Is adaptability. Every year you learn something else, but it's always, how do we adapt? How do I adapt better to what I just learned for the next year coming in? Right.
That's why deer hunt
up all off season. That's why. Yeah.
That's why deer hunting's awesome, right? You never stop learning. It's every single year. Cause like I can look back where, 2 years ago, I thought like 100% mobile, that's the way to go. Where like 4 years ago, I was like, oh, maybe a happy medium, partially permanent, partially mobile. Where 10 years ago was like all permanent. And now I'm back to, the way that I thought 5 years ago. It's like, it's a never ending cycle, because you're constantly learning, man. And that's why this is so much fun. And that's why all these podcasts and videos, you could sit and talk about this for 20 hours, for a week if you wanted to, cause it's just,
right.
It's nonstop. The last thing I wanted to get into for this summer for me, is shooting my bow. And I know we've all talked about that a little bit. And maybe we'll do a whole podcast just on shooting and arrows and practice and our setups and stuff like that. But I bought a new bow last year, and I felt like last year I just kind of fell in love with it and started getting the hang of using that bow and getting good with it. And this year I want to really dial it in. The one thing I wasn't happy with was my arrow setup and how my arrows were flying out of my bow and like the tune I had. I ended up hunting with Grim Reapers for the whole year because I just couldn't get my bow to tune with fixed head or fixed blade broadheads. So that was kind of disappointing for me last year. So I'm going to probably end up taking it down to that Miller's Gun Supply, see if I can't have them work on it. see if I can't get it tuned up to be slinging, some slick tricks, pretty straight down range. But, working on my form, that's another thing I really want to work on, because last year I started shooting a new release, and I feel like that was a whole new learning curve. I started shooting a thumb release for deer hunting. So just kind of trying to master that this summer and get really, really used to it and just make it a part of me, a part of my system or whatever. And just kind of perfect.
It's important to have.
Yeah, go ahead.
It's important to get your confidence. You don't want to be deer hunting and thinking about your equipment.
No.
It needs to be out of sight, out of mind, something that you're not thinking about. But it's difficult to get there. It's challenging and it's time consuming. You really got to put in some effort to get your gear to be, shooting tack drivers.
Yep.
And I know, I upgraded my bow 2 years ago, and just finding out what that bow wants to shoot was, a process. But really, if you can get yourself with your gear where you don't have to think about your gear, it's part of you, and you're going to be slinging it, and you have all the confidence in the world that 35 yards and in, you're going to put that arrow where it needs to be. And you're not worried about, what if I flinch, or what if no what ifs. No, just, focus on the deer, put it where you want it, and let that arrow fly and whack him, man. Get him.
Muscle memory. I couldn't agree more, John. The thing I noticed the most last year, my first year compound bow hunting, was I draw back on some deer, and the thing I noticed the most that was so uncomfortable to me, I shot my ass off all summer, everything, was I didn't feel comfortable when I was actually up in the stand when I pulled back. That's when I felt like my form went to shit. And that's the biggest thing I got to practice this year is anybody can shoot on the ground at a target on the ground, right? But once you have this much room of foot width to deal with on a small climber stand,
yep.
You got
and you're shooting down, and
you're shooting down.
It's windy at a moving target, and you're nervous, and your heart's beating out of your chest. It's a totally different thing. Yep. This is what I'll say, Bryce. Just a little thing of advice. The best thing I could say for you to do is, out back, go get yourself a really cheap ladder stand and put it out back and put a deer target out there. And every day, just go take one shot. You get one chance. That's it. Just like you're really hunting. If you screw it up, too bad. You got to wait till tomorrow to try it again. And just make sure put an arrow through that bow every single day, but you're going to put pressure on yourself because this is my only shot to make a good shot. You know what I mean? And you get used to doing that pressure.
I like that. Right.
That was another thing that I can hit on real quick. It was last year, like I said, I had a new bow. The filming aspect, adds a whole nother thing of it for me too. Another sort of source of anxiety, making sure that the deer's in frame and all this stuff, and it's recording and trying to move the camera without getting busted. But last year, all 3 deer that I shot were like less than desirable shots. I got all the deer that I shot, but the first doe I killed was a spine shot. That's no good. That one tore me up. The buck I killed was a little back. It took me forever to find him. And then the doe that I shot in January or February was a gut shot. And I mean, even that doe that I shot was 12 yards and I gut shot her. And it's just, a lot of people don't talk about this stuff, but it's me rushing the shot and just feeling that pressure, you know what I mean? And kind of breaking down in the moment. I just attribute it to a new bow, filming, and all that pressure I put on myself, which we've talked about in past episodes. But perfecting my bow and feeling really confident in that aspect of it, I think will help me this year. Try to eliminate those bad shots, I guess.
So to add on to that, you mentioned maybe getting a cheap ladder stand.
Yeah.
I would almost not do that. I would take your climber
That's what I was thinking.
and practice hanging your climber.
Right.
It was amazing when I first got my lone wolf with the stick and stand, and I practiced it all summer. I'd climb it and tear it down, climb it, tear it down. The first couple of times I did it, oh buddy, was I sore.
Oh,
My
sweating
muscles
bullets
just
too.
weren't.
I
Yeah,
remember that from last year.
my shoulders, my back, my hamstrings from pushing up and getting up. I think there's something to practicing your setup, your stand, your stick and stand, your mobile setup.
I agree.
How are you going to do it? Can you do it in the dark? Is it going to be easy? Do you know where all your stuff's at? And then just kind of building your endurance, I guess,
Yeah.
would be the word. Your legs,
Efficiency.
being able to
I too.
in that awkward position to climb and get yourself up.
Your muscle memory.
Um,
Yeah, that's a
Oh,
great
yeah.
point, John. That's a great point. You definitely, I mean, I would get a ladder stand just to make it easy on yourself, because you're probably not going to want to set that stand up and tear it down every single day. Just to get used to shooting like from a platform, it would be helpful, but definitely practice, especially John or Bryce, because last year the mobile setup was really new to you.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the more you do it, like me and John have been hanging mobile sets. I've been hanging a mobile set since I was in high school. I had one of the first lone wolves, and shoot, man, it's kind of a little learning curve about halfway up the tree the first morning, and then you kind of get it. And it's like I could hang a stand faster than 90% of people. Not to sound like I'm fooling myself, but 90% of people could climb to the same height with a climber. Like, I guarantee it. It becomes second nature to you. And the more you practice, the better you're going to get at it. But
Right.
like I said, though, even as well versed and as good as I think I am at it, going back to being mobile all the time, I still think I scared a lot of deer last year during the rut, bouncing around as much as I did. It's hard to be quiet, but anyways.
It is. It is. Yeah, I'm excited. I mean, all you can do is practice, right?
So we got, yeah. So we kind of talked about what we're getting into right now, what we're looking forward to. Is there anything else that you're kind of, we're transitioning into this deer season? Is there anything else left on the table to talk about, or
I
is
guess
this kind of the moment to?
so. As Bryce, I'm not sure what
I know we've got like 5 things to follow up on, but
yeah, I'm not sure
Right.
how what your goals are this summer, this fall, and we can talk about our fall goals another time. But John, like, do you have a big buck in mind? Do you know?
So last year I did a similar process I did this year. I set up cell cameras on the back side of my property between the swamp and the farmer's bean field. And actually he's doing beans again this year. I don't know how he's pulling that off. It's like 2 or 3 years in a row, but hey, anyways, I got a really nice buck last year. And I know I showed you pictures of him, Josh, last year.
Yep.
And when I was setting up cameras this year, last weekend, I ended up bumping a deer, and he actually ran in front of one of the cameras I just set up. And he's got some pretty good potential.
Yeah, I saw that picture.
Maybe it's the same one as last year if he survived, but every year I get a really nice one hitting those beans. And I honestly don't know how to go about it. I feel like as soon as the season hits, he moves on. A week, 2 weeks prior to the season opening, I stopped getting pictures. I don't know. I don't know. I don't know what to do, but yeah, I got one back there. He's back.
You got to find that
In
acorn.
June. He's already got 6 points, and his his brow tines are 4 inches long. So
Yeah, you got to find that acorn tree that they all head over to once them beans dry up.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I got a couple bucks. I got a buck last year that I saw in person on November, I think 1st. He's like a 10 pointer or something. He ended up busting off a bunch of tines. I had pictures of him. Like I never saw him until November. The first time I saw him was on camera the night before I saw him in person, and then I had pictures of him like I don't know throughout the rest of the year, like once a week or something. He was pretty regular after that, but I don't have a name for him, but I would like to get a shot at that deer because he was a pretty old mature deer. And then I think he was a 3.5-year-old last year, had 2 crab claws that I had running around early season all through the summer and early season. And that was one of those bucks where if I would have stayed put, I could have smoked him. But I think I might have a shot at him this year if he hangs around. But like I said, I don't have any cameras out or anything yet, so we'll find out. How about you, Bryce? You got anything? Got anything in the works?
Nothing out. I don't got any cameras out. I do got some mineral black. I'm about ready to.
Any bucks got your name on him?
Anything bigger than a spike and a 4-point.
There you go.
Anything bigger than I seen last year.
I mean, Bryce, I know you're getting into the bow hunting.
Yeah.
I would just encourage, having the mindset of if you have an opportunity at some does, don't pass.
I'm not this year. I did that last year.
I'd sling it.
Really.
I'd sling it and start, tallying and getting good kills underneath your belt, and that's only going to boost your confidence.
Right.
Maybe you'll make some mistakes, but making mistakes is good.
It's part of hunting.
You're going to learn from it.
100%.
You're going to rush a shot and be like, I gut shot that doe. Hopefully you could still recover her, but you're going to learn from that mistake. I'd hate for you to have a giant walk out on you and you botch it up because you're nervous.
First deer you ever release an arrow at.
You might still, but
yeah.
Right.
But yeah, kind of build up, those notches on your belt, because I know that helped me when I first started with the bow.
I bet.
Yeah,
I regret it.
I was real nervous. I made some mistakes, but 4 years into it now I'm punching it right through the money on does, and I just feel all the confidence in the world that if I get the opportunity at the buck I want, I'm going to get him. But, it took seasons and mistakes to get there.
Being around a lot of deer. Yeah. I think I've talked about this before too, is, in my hunting career, I started out hunting when I was like 14, 15, and I was like a trophy hunter immediately. I fell in love with hunting based on, Todd Pringett's and, all them old school bow hunters, where they're hunting these giant bucks. And I mean, I held out for a buck for like 4 years, and the first buck I killed was a little 6-pointer, but yeah, I just didn't kill a lot of deer because I was so obsessed with like, I'm going to kill a big buck. And I probably didn't kill a buck until, a good buck for, I don't know, I'd probably been hunting for almost 10 years, I would say, before I killed a good buck. But I made so many mistakes on deer for years that I'm embarrassed to bring up and talk about because I didn't just get good at killing deer.
Because
Go ahead,
you
John.
you see what works and what doesn't.
Yeah.
High shots.
Right.
Low shots, forward shots. Where's that shoulder blade? Is your equipment going to be able to punch through some bone, or is it not? Are you going to just have to shoot a little bit farther back? Is a double lung your shot? I don't know. You have to learn that by putting it into action.
Don't even get me started on tracking deer and how important that is, and how much
No,
Let's save
experience,
that for another.
how much
too.
experience you need to know what you're doing when it comes to that stuff, man. Like I'm still
Josh, we've
learning.
got some good stories.
Mhm.
Yeah, we do. But well, guys, I think we
was
talked for
great.
about an hour here. You guys got any closing thoughts or anything? I'm excited for this summer. I'm excited to keep going with this podcast. We got a couple new ideas. If the listeners out there want to hear about John's food plot a little more, because I do, let us know. You guys got anything for the listeners or anything?
Shoot.
Yeah, I'm just excited to, transition into deer, get excited.
Yeah.
And that long ass list, I want to whittle it down, but I think that's a mountain that I may not be able to climb. I'm gonna try.
That's all that matters. Keep chipping away.
Bryce, you keep killing groundhogs, and John,
Right
good
on.
luck with that list. I got to get some cameras out this weekend, I think, because I feel behind. But we really appreciate you guys joining. We will see you on the next one. Stay safe and good luck this summer. Good luck this fall. We'll talk to you before then. But again, thanks for joining, and we'll see you all later.
Yep. See you guys.